we are going to be looking at Nobody Loses All the Time by E. Cummings. All right. And he wrote this poem in 1926. So he is a modernist poet. And what do we know about the modernist poets? So these are the guys who are writing after the First World War, after the world had gone, oh my goodness, look how horrible these humans are, and all these old beliefs we had and the way things were done and the form thing, and in a poetic way, following a certain rhythm and certain themes, etc., etc. I mean, the old way of the world, look what it brought us. It brought us this massive catastrophe, the scale of which we had never, ever seen on the planet before in history, and a horrible war it was, with machines being used and mustard gas, etc. And you've got poems that deal with that. So the modernists were rejecting all of that. So what are some of the conventions of modernist poetry?
Really sure.
So there's a lack of structure and form. And even if they did something that was a sonnet form, they would mess with it. So typically we're going to see free verse or a variety of structures all put into one. Okay, it's not just going to be a ballad that keeps a ballad structure the whole way through. They're going to mess with the structure. Free verse is typical. Because of mass printing that was happening at the time, they could mess with typography and play creatively with typography, the way the lines and the words are printed on the page. There's a famous poem about a snail where it's literally written round and round and round and round and round like that. I think it was an Ezra Pound poem. I could be making that up. So you've got to pay attention with the modernist poems to the typography of it, the fact that they are playing with free verse. And whenever we see free verse, like in Afrikaans, you get vrye vers, that always, most of them talk about the chaotische binnewêreld van 'n tiener, the chaotic inner world of being a teenager. At the time, in the 20s, you had this very, very chaotic, crazy time, which was heading fast towards, well, they didn't know in 1926, but it was after the war, and they were like living like there was no tomorrow. And then in 1929, there was the fall of the Wall Street Stock Exchange, which caused the Great Depression all over the world. And then there were those difficult, hard, economically tough 1930s leading up to the catastrophe of World War II. So difficult times to live, but also kind of like crazy, heady. Those of us who didn't die in the war, well, let's just live like there's no tomorrow. And free verse definitely emphasizes the unpredictability of the time of people in which they were living, as well as showing the rejection of the old poetic conventions. All right? The kind of topics and themes that were used as well. It's not like these romantic ideals and odes to nature and higher philosophic things. It was very much everyday stuff was being spoken about and described. But don't let the everyday nature of the modernist poems mislead you, because the subject matter was often everyday, dealing with everyday folk, right? But not the kind of people that normally would have poems written about.
Okay.
But the themes and the ideas underneath that are broader and deeper. Are you clear on the difference between the subject matter of a poem and the theme of a poem?
To an extent, yes.
Okay, so let me clarify that. The subject matter of a poem is what is actually in the poem. Okay, so if you look at this painting behind me, the subject matter is bushes and foliage, and then there is a close-up of a piece of crocheted work, and then a rose, right? That's what the painter has physically painted. How does that painting make you feel? I know it's kind of hard looking at the screen, but what do you think the painting is actually about? Did the painter go, I want to paint a painting of a whole lot of foresty trees and things at Margate, and then with a embroidered, a piece of embroidery on top, zoomed in on in a rose. That's what I'm going to make a painting about. Those are the subject matter the painter made to convey the thoughts and ideas that she wanted to convey. So when you look at this painting, let me bring you closer. What do you think the painting's about? How does it make you feel? And it's not great on the screen, but the colors, the shapes, what emotions might it bring up?
Yeah. I don't know, some sort of sadness or
Yes? Why do you say sadness?
I don't know, it feels like there's more to it
Yes,
rather than
but
just
go with
what I'm
sadness.
seeing.
Go
Yeah.
with sadness, yes.
Uh, I don't know, the color she used just gives it a
Which
different
color
type of
denotes sadness to
the
you?
I feel like the purple gives me,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, and there's a lot of dark,
tones and
sharp lines in there. Okay, so we could go on and on into that painting, but it's interesting that immediately you went, your sadness, because the artist painted this painting a few months after her mother had died from breast cancer. And the subject matter was a photo that she'd taken at her mom's, at her place in Margate, looking out into the coastal forest. And then this was a piece of embroidery that her mother had crocheted. And then this flower, the rose, was in a vase next to her bed the night she died.
wow.
And you picked up your, oh, I don't know, sadness. So, and you can then also see this red, which, because the artist herself was fighting breast cancer at the time her mother died of breast cancer. Go figure. And artist is fine now, by the way. But her mother suddenly became obsessed with the color purple. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Okay. There's the pinks around the theme of breast cancer as well. There's these sharp, strong angles. So you can sort of feel that the pain is close, right? You can even feel the darkness around the edges. This is a painting like when you went, yo, sadness. Somebody's painted this painting whilst they were still in the grief. They hadn't moved through it. And you picked it up immediately. Now, a poem is a word painting. Poem is a word painting. And in the same way as an artist goes, I've got all of this feeling inside me around the death of my mother from a disease that I'm fighting myself right now. I don't know how to put it into words, but I can put it in to a painting and into image and into to artistic gesture and color, right? So a poet goes, I want to write about a poem about, I want to write a poem about that incredible feeling you get when you are newly in love with someone. And every time when you're in their physical presence and when you are first kind of in the bloom of love and lust, you do not want to leave each other's presence. You wake up the next morning and it's like nothing in the world exists, right? So John Donne goes, how am I going to convey this? I'm going to write a poem where I use the metaphor of the sun and the idea that literally this room that the lovers are in is the only room in the whole universe. Okay?
Yeah.
That's the subject matter. So, in Nobody Loses All the Time, the subject matter is the speaker's Uncle Sol, who seems like a fun guy who entertained people enormously, who was a great singer, a great fun entertainer. but as the speaker says in the beginning, was always known as a born loser. And the poem tells in a very kind of entertaining way, almost like somebody would stand up on a vaudeville stage and tell a funny poem, tells
Mhm.
rather a tragic story. And I think as we go through it, I want you to think about it. Is it ultimately a tragic, depressing, sad story, or is there an enduring, uplifting message by the end of it? Why have I got this image on here?
The worms, at the end, they mention how Saul's body eventually nourishes the earth. And so
Yeah.
he won at something.
So
Or
finally he wins at something, you know?
Mm.
I mean, ultimately, shame he has this amazing funeral, but like, even
There's
when he
not
dies,
enough
he doesn't
words.
catch a break because it's like the friends and the relatives get to have this scrumptious feast at his funeral, scrumptious. Okay. And he doesn't get to share and he's not there. But he starts a successful worm farm. And maybe that is the uplifting message of the poem, that you could be a loser in life. And maybe Cummings is inviting us to look at this more from a broader philosophical lens and go, you know what we think is losing in the grand scheme of things and life, and how we're born, we die, we become worm food, which then creates plants, which animals eat, and then we eat, and so the cycle of life goes on.
Yeah.
So how bad are our failures ultimately in the end when it talks about the continuation of life on the planet? Perhaps that's what it is. Or it might just be an ironic, joking plot twist of like, well, there we go. He was successful as a worm farm, or probably both in terms of the poet. So I have got, they say he sang, what was the song that he sings?
McCann.
McCann, he was a diver. So I found a recording and it's an old recording of somebody talking about this song that was a popular song in the 1920s. And this old guy sings it. And I thought it's a lovely old recording that just gives a bit of authenticity to this poem. And I want to start you off with that. So listen to this.
You see. At any rate, it's one of the Irish songs, which was probably a popular song and was sung quite, mostly like a folk song at the time. It's called McCann, he was a diver, and it goes like this. McCann, he was a diver, and he worked beneath the sea off a Jersey pier, off a Jersey pier. O'Reilly worked the pump above his hand upon the line, pumping atmosphere, pumping atmosphere. One day McCann was walking on the bottom of the sea. He met a mermaid and she said, McCann, she said she, you look just like a devilfish, and will you marry me? Oh, ho, says McCann, pull me up, O'Reilly, where it's dry. For I met a lady down below, and she has a fishy eye. Oh, she's looking nice and neat, but bedad, she has no feet. Pull me up, O'Reilly, where it's dry.
That's
Lovely,
so
eh?
pretty. Wow.
Right. Let's have a read. Nobody loses all the time. And I'm going to read it, paying attention to the line length and the enjambment and the letters that is capitalized to try and get remember, free verse doesn't lack rhythm,
Mhm.
doesn't lack form. Free verse definitely has its own rhythm and rhythms and form. It just doesn't have a repeated, expected rhythm. Okay? Nobody loses all the time. I had an uncle named Sol who was a born failure, and nearly everybody said he should have gone into vaudeville, perhaps because my Uncle Sol could sing "McCann, he was a diver" on Xmas Eve like hell itself, which may or may not account for the fact that my uncle Sol indulged in that possibly most inexcusable of all, to use a highfalutin phrase, luxuries, that is, or to wit, farming. And be it needlessly added, my Uncle Sol's farm failed because the chickens ate the vegetables, so my Uncle Sol had a chicken farm till the skunks ate the chickens, when my Uncle Sol had a skunk farm, but the skunks caught cold and died. And so my Uncle Sol imitated the skunks in a subtle manner, or by drowning himself in the water tank. But someone who'd given my Uncle Sol a Victor Victrola and records while he lived presented to him on the auspicious occasion of his decease a scrumptious, not to mention splendiferous funeral, with tall boys and black gloves and flowers and everything. And I remember we all cried like the Missouri when my Uncle Sol's coffin lurched because somebody pressed a button and down went my Uncle Sol and started a worm farm. I'm going to press the button. Please watch. You have to enjoy this. I did that so that you could take note of the topography. Right. What stands out to you about the title?
It's lowercase.
Yeah, and what do you think the significance of having the whole title in lowercase is with relation to what this poet wanted to say to us?
I don't know if I could say it's like a message in itself, or
Yes,
the
yes.
message of the poem is
Why?
in the title itself.
Why?
Hmm.
Okay, so often to answer a question, this is a little technique that you can use for your poetry, for your comprehension, whatever else. If you think, I don't know how to say what it is, I don't know how to say why it is. Imagine if it was done the other way. What would be the difference? So if it had a nobody with a capital and then losers and then time, what does capitalizing letters in a title do to those words?
Not sure.
So if the title of the poem was Liam's Room, and it was Liam with a capital and room with an R, Liam's Room, as opposed to Liam's Room. By capitalizing words in a title, it gives those words emphasis and importance. And it's just, there's no importance. There's no significant words in the title. And that reinforces the idea that, hey, I mean, nobody loses all the time, not even my loser Uncle Sol. But also, we also get the sense that Uncle Sol's a bit of a nobody, isn't he?
Yeah.
And here's a story of how he loses all the time. I see a double meaning in that title.
That's fair, isn't
But then we go into the first stanza, and we see that the I is not capitalized either. So he's also making himself insignificant, and yet he capitalizes soul. So I get a sense again that the individual, if you're looking at the cycle of life, sorry, I'm trying to do Lion King, but I don't know the words. But it is the cycle of life, right? And the individual in the cycle of life is insignificant compared to we're born, we live, we make mistakes, we win, we lose. Because at the end of the day, whether he was a huge success or lived the life he lived, all going to end up as worm food, right? And like with your literature questions, with poetry, if there's a question that's asking for interpretation, if you can interpret it in a unique way and back it up with evidence from the poem, it's not going to be wrong. Okay, so I had an uncle named Sol, capital, who was a born failure. We get a sense of somebody looking back on somebody they remember from childhood. He obviously remembers him very fondly and was a born failure. It almost feels like that's what was said about him in the family. And nearly everybody said he should have gone into vaudeville, which should have been capitalized if it wasn't a modernist poet, minimizing the importance of that. What was vaudeville?
Type of genre, but I know there's also a place for the type of entertainment.
Yes,
Sorry.
it was a type of entertainment. It was a type of entertainment. So vaudeville was on stages. It was like a variety show, okay? And people would sign up on their vaudeville acts, and they would only pay if they went on. And people could boo them off immediately, then they go off and they wouldn't get paid, right? So you'd be on the bill, and if you got top billing, then you would be like right near the beginning, you definitely go on and get paid. That's where the theatrical term break a leg comes in, actually, because the curtains on the side of the stage are called legs. And you'd say to a vaudeville actor, break a leg, which means I hope you get to get on tonight, and then you get paid. Okay, so the amusing thing, everyone said he was that good, he should have gone into vaudeville. And vaudeville is actually kind of like a low class mass entertainment level of entertainment. So we could compare it to somebody going, Liam, you're such a talented actor, you should get into soap operas. Okay, whereas people who perform on Broadway or in movies would go like, dude, you don't want to be a soap opera actor. So everyone said he should have gone into vaudeville because he was such a good entertainer. Perhaps because, and he gives a specific example, my Uncle Sol could sing. McCanny was a diver, and we heard it earlier. Why do you think he writes Xmas Eve and not Christmas Eve? Like hell itself.
Presume it's less formal or.
Yeah, and would you think somebody who is religious, somebody who is a devout Christian would ever write Christmas like that?
No.
And would they then say, would they be singing McCanny was a diver on Christmas Eve? No, they'd be singing Christmas carols, right?
No.
And you also wouldn't say you could sing it like hell itself if it's somebody who's, he's not a churchgoer. And there, I suppose, once again, it's setting up for the irony of this fancy funeral, right? Notice that this is the longest line in the whole poem. It's a born failure, but here it peaks. So this is like the peak of his whole life, which is when he sang and entertained people, no doubt in a pub. But he must have been good enough, and he must have been a good enough singer that somebody who had money noticed, because what was he gifted?
At funerals, splendiferous,
With a what? How was the music? A Victor Victrola.
Victor Victrola.
Here it is. It's an old-fashioned record player. Okay. Somebody gave him.
Victrola and records.
While he lived, he gave him a Victor Victrola. It's a make of record player.
Wow.
Okay? It's like somebody gave him a JBL. So he gave him this. That only somebody with money would have had. And records. So somebody had spotted, you like singing. And you entertain us enough that we're going to give you this. Which makes me feel sad for Uncle Sol, because maybe he should have gone into vaudeville.
Possibly.
Yeah. Which may or may not account for the fact. So that my Uncle Sol indulged in that possibly most inexcusable of all, to use a highfalutin phrase. So there's a sense in the next stanza, and things start going downhill from here. Look on the page, they go downhill. Din, 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 din. Okay, so the high point is when he sang it like hell itself, and people thought he should. And now there's a suggestion or an implication that it went a bit to his head. It's like, oh, I'm so good. So, you know, whatever, I'm so great. I could be a farmer. Inexcusable of all luxuries to be a farmer, right? I mean, farming, to own the land, yeah, you've got to have money. Is it a luxurious life, though, farming?
No.
No, it's
For him,
hard.
no. Yeah.
It's bloody hard, as
Definitely.
Uncle Sol found out.
Yeah.
And the highfalutin phrase, or to wit farming, that he's using a kind of like a somebody who is not posh or
Some
well
southern,
educated is
southern slang. Like,
trying to use the words that sound like they're very fancy.
okay.
Okay, so we see this is a working class speaker as well as working class soul. These are not rich, high status, high society people. And be it needlessly added, why do you think it's needlessly added that he failed?
Needlessly added. He was born a failure, so
Yeah, he's born a failure. Obviously, he's going to fail, right?
yeah.
And notice the form and structure. These two sestets are similar in length and similar compared to, if you go back, always for your exams, prepare something where you link the title to the subject and theme, and where you are able to link the structure to the theme of the poem. And you can, because it goes up to his high point where you've got all the compliments. And then it's right downhill from there. And then we have a failure and another repeated failure in a similar fashion, correct? In stanzas 3 and 4. And the reasons why it failed, I mean, oh my goodness, the chickens eat the vegetables. I mean, he has not bothered to put up a fence around the vegetable patch. It doesn't follow through, does Uncle Sol? And then, so he's like, oh, fine, I'll have a chicken farm. I'll just let them eat the vegetables. But he doesn't get a chicken coop and put them safely in it at night. And the skunks eat them. So he's like, well, that's cool. I'll have a skunk farm. I'll just let the skunks roam around. And like, that's a great idea. Now I'll have a skunk farm. But he's not really doing the work to have a skunk farm. And he doesn't build the skunks a shed for the winter. And they get cold and they die. I mean, so now we've got dead vegetables, dead chickens, dead skunks. It's terrible. And now he's got nothing left. And we have this very dark irony, imitated the skunks in a subtle manner. So, I mean, he subtly died himself of cold. By drowning himself in the water tank, or by drowning himself in the water tank. And then we have a turn, but the Volta. And do we see how then it builds to a crescendo again, or a high point, typographically, in his life? So the next high point is his funeral, okay? And it's sadly ironic, tragically ironic, because poor old Uncle Sol doesn't get to enjoy this big, fancy, splendiferous funeral. But there is a somebody who had actually given him a Victor Victrola and records while he lived. Presented to him. Even look at the language, how fancy and posh it sounds. On the auspicious occasion of his decease. I mean, oh, come on, man. You know, when Queen Elizabeth died, it was auspicious. When Nelson Mandela died, it was auspicious. To think, Uncle Sol. And yet he meant something to at least one person. And in fact, we all. There were tall boys in black gloves and flowers and everything. So he gave him a really fancy send-off. So he was loved. Another thing to show us how loved he was is he remembered we all cried like the Missouri. What is the Missouri?
The river.
It's a river, yes, a river. obviously Midwestern people. And you can see by the simple phrases in life and that they all cried like the Missouri. When my Uncle Sol's coffin lurched, somebody pressed a button, whoop. Are you ready to see it again?
Yes. Down went Uncle Sol.
Ah, and started a worm farm. Yes, and then I got bored and didn't animate the worm. I'm sorry. So we have this pathos. It's told in a jovial, like I'm telling a funny story in a bar kind of way. Horror, horror,
Yeah.
horror. The language is very colloquial, right? The register is colloquial. And then we have this pathos. Why do you think we have parentheses, brackets?
This is like sort of like a document thing.
Or why do we use parentheses? Why do we bracket something at the end of a phrase or story?
To show the action. No, I'm thinking of dialogue. I'm thinking of dialogue.
Bracket adds extra information. It can be like an afterthought, right? So it's almost like an afterthought. But when you're looking at the modernist poems, look at typography. It's important. The words that he capitalizes: Uncle Sol, the Victor Victrola record, Missouri, McCann was a diver. The important moments, and he gives Uncle Sol caps the whole way through. So this is a bit of a celebration of Uncle Sol. It's saying all his failings, but there's you can see that the speaker has love for him and appreciation. And when we look at those brackets, it feels like it's a bit of a hug, doesn't it?
Yeah, like a
And
soft.
if we're looking at the visualization of down he goes, when he gets to that point, whoops, now so down goes the coffin and now it's in a grave. So the brackets almost show the containment of Uncle Sol's coffin visually on the page, as well as adding the extra points, because what he's talking about is we cried and then Darling went and he did that. And his success, his non-failure, his starting the worm farm in brackets, in parentheses at the end, like an afterthought, is also sadly fitting with the whole tone around Uncle Sol just not being particularly, I mean, he's just a sad loser, right? And yet, it meant enough that somebody gave him a Victor Victrola record and cared enough to give him this great big funeral. And everybody cried like mad. So it's both funny and sad. And then also there's something, I guess, quite comforting about the fact that we're all the same humans. Failure or success or whatever else, ultimately, we end up as worm farm. Look at this verb, lurched. Talk to me about that verb. It's quite a verb to say. It doesn't say when my uncle's coffin moved forward, or I mean,
Lurched. I don't know. Why did they choose that, like instead of like descended or
right, because when it moved or descended, that would sound far more formal, funereal, respectful. But I mean, even like at the last minute, the last minute is the splendid funeral, everything else, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, oh, shit. It's gonna whoop, it's gonna slip and flip, right? So I mean, typical. No matter how much money was spent in it, of course, like whoop, it doesn't just move gently and gracefully forward and descend.
so abrupt, just
I know. Typical Uncle Sol. Okay, so let's have a look at some practice questions. All right. Summarize the story of Uncle Sol as presented in the poem. Focus on his character and the sequence of events regarding his various farms. All right, now, that is a practice question to get you exam ready. You're never going to get such an easy question in your exam.
Quite unfortunate.
But if you look at it in terms of going, he was a born loser, he entertained people by singing, he then got it in his head he could start a farm, starts a vegetable farm, the chickens eat the vegetables, skunks eat the chickens, skunks die of cold, he drowns in the water tank, and somebody gives him an amazing funeral. And important detail would be in terms of his character. He just doesn't stick with anything. I often wonder if Uncle Sol had been able to have Ritalin, his story may have been very different. So, 2, explain the significance of the poem's title, Nobody Loses All the Time, in relation to the poem's central theme and Uncle Sol's experience. I'm just going to read through these questions now, and then I will give you, I'll let you take screenshots and then give you the memo as well, okay? 6, discuss the tone of the poem. How does E.E. Cummings blend humor, cruelty, and sentimentality? What's sentimentality?
Sentimental, value, something with value. From my understanding, it's like when something's sentimental, it's like something that has value to you or means something to you. Or...
Emotional meaning, yes. Yes. So, like, it's strong, sad emotions. So if you're looking back at something sadly, but feeling emotions of love or nostalgia or pity. I can never get rid of this pen because this was the pen I was using when I taught Liam. Okay, so just analyze how the structure and punctuation or lack thereof contribute to the overall impact and meaning of the poem. Take a screenshot. Please click subscribe. It's free. And for more content in this section, click on the playlist.